Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to this Henley & Partners Global Webcast Series event. The topic for today's webcast is the Australian Global Talent Program, current opportunities and upcoming changes. My name is Tony Leneves, and I'm the Managing Partner of Henley & Partners Australia. Today, I'll be speaking about the Australian Global Talent Program, the new National Innovation Visa, and some changes which were announced recently by the Australian Government. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping issues. As with all Henley & Partners webcasts, I'll leave some time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions you might have. If you do have questions, please just type them into the Q&A section on your screen. This webcast is also being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all of those who registered for the event. And of course, at the end, I will also provide my contact details should you wish to send me an email or schedule a one-on-one discussion. Okay, so let's get started. For those of you who are new to our events, Henley & Partners is a citizenship and residence advisory firm. In fact, we are the global leader in citizenship and residence by investment. We were pioneers of the investment migration industry in the 1990s, and our footprint is now truly global. We have 55 offices around the world, and our staff advise clients on more than 40 investment migration options. Of course, today we're just focusing on one of those options, the Australian Global Talent Program. But private client advisory is just one part of what we do here at Henley & Partners. The other side of our business is government advisory. And over the past 3 decades, we have advised multiple governments on the design, the setup, and the implementation of some of the world's most successful investment migration programs. Through our government advisory practice, we've helped governments generate more than $12 billion in foreign direct investment. This map shows you the location of our offices around the world, and you can see that we are located in the major source markets such as the US, Asia, and Africa, as well as in the major residence and citizen destination countries, North America, in Europe, the Caribbean, and in the Asia Pacific region. At Henley & Partners, we provide our clients with a complete end-to-end hand-holding service. So no matter where you are located or which residence or citizenship program you're considering, we have someone on the ground to advise you and to ensure your application has the best chance of success. So if you're listening to this webinar today and you're in the United States and you're interested in the Australian Global Talent Program, we have client advisors based in the US who can talk to you about the program, can explain to you how the program operates and how Henley & Partners can help you. And then my team here in Australia, should you decide to go ahead, we would take care of the application for you. And we do that wherever we operate citizenship or residence programs. I mentioned before that we advise our clients on more than 40 investment migration options around the world. And this slide shows you the leading residence and citizenship programs available through Henley & Partners. Okay, I'd like now to move on to Australia and give you some information about the programs that are currently available and some changes that are coming later in 2024, later this year. So when I do these presentations, I regularly get asked why Australia is consistently listed in the top 4 or 5 destinations globally for investors and high net worth migration generally. Well, these are just some of the reasons that our clients mention when they talk to us about why they're looking at Australia. Often it's the standard of living, the fact that it's a very multicultural society here. Our political, social and economic stability is always mentioned to us. The next point about education, I would say that is the #1 driver for applicants seeking residence in Australia. Australia has a very, very good English education system. In fact, our English education system is a very big export earner for the country. At any one time, we have over 400,000 international students studying here in our colleges and universities. Also, the Australian healthcare system is mentioned. That was tested, obviously, during the COVID period and proved to operate very, very well. And the Australian healthcare system is generally regarded as one of the best in the world. In The Economist ranking each year of the world's most livable cities, typically there are 3 or 4 Australian cities in the top 10. Melbourne, where I'm located, is often in the top 5. And then finally, this is a very important issue for our high net worth clients. Australia has no gift taxes, no estate taxes, or no wealth taxes. Very important consideration for some clients. All right, let's move now to the Global Talent Independent Program itself and drill down into that in a little bit more detail. So what is Global Talent? The Global Talent Independent Program was a pilot program introduced by the Australian government in 2019. It was designed to provide a streamlined pathway to permanent residence for skilled executives, business people, entrepreneurs, academics, professionals. And the design of the program was so that it would bring innovation to our tech economy and create opportunities for Australians by transferring skills. Now, I said it was a pilot program in 2019. The government expanded it in 2020 and 2021 when they added a lot more places. There are fewer places available now. It's been a very successful program, but it's still very popular. This year, for 2024-25, there are 4,000 places available under the Global Talent Program. So what are the key benefits? What are the main factors of Global Talent? Well, first of all, there is no investment requirement. There is no requirement for you to make any financial investment into Australia whatsoever. There's also no age limit with Global Talent. But I should point out that applicants over the age of 55 must demonstrate exceptional benefit to the country. Now, the reason for that is 55 years is the minimum retirement age in Australia. And the Australian government does not want Global Talent to become a retirement program. It's not for people seeking to come to Australia to retire. This is an active program for people to transfer skills, bring their experience, bring their knowledge, and transfer that to the Australian economy. Another key benefit, it's a direct route to permanent residence. Now, for any of you who are familiar with some other Australian programs of the past, there have often been 2-stage programs where you initially get a provisional or temporary visa for a number of years, and then after completing some residence and some other factors, you eventually get permanent residence. Global Talent is different to that. It's direct to permanent residence. And that's very, very attractive for one particular reason, and that is the education system. Because it's direct to permanent residence, when you apply for Global Talent and your visa is granted to you, you and all of your family members become permanent residents of Australia from day one. That means if you have older school-age children, children going to college or university, they can attend those institutions and pay the same fees as any other Australian citizen or permanent resident. No need to look at student visas. You don't need to look at international student fees. A very, very attractive option for people looking at education in Australia. Okay, what are the key requirements for Global Talent? So the Australian government has listed these 10 future-focused industry sectors. And what they've said is, we are looking for the best and brightest talent from around the world in those 10 sectors. And you can see what they are. At Henley & Partners, we've assisted clients in all of those sectors. Mostly, I would say, we've helped clients in the digitech sector, financial services and fintech, education, health industries and energy, and resources. They would be the sectors that we've done the most work in, but we've helped clients in all 10 of them. So if you're working in one of those sectors, or you have a business operating in one of those sectors, or you're an academic and your research is in one of those sectors, or you're employed in a company at a very senior level in an industry or a business that's operating in one of those industry sectors, you may be eligible for global talent, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, what are the main requirements for a global talent visa application? So applicants for global talent need to be internationally recognised and currently prominent in their field and able to provide evidence of outstanding achievements over their careers. And you can see there we've listed a few things that might apply. You may be in a very senior role in a business. You may have some patents that you own. You may have received some professional awards in your field. You may have some international publications and memberships. Whatever it is, you need to be able to demonstrate to the Australian government that you are at the top of your field and you are internationally recognised. You have to also provide evidence that you would be an asset to Australia in your area of expertise and have no difficulty obtaining employment, if that's what you're seeking to do in Australia, or becoming established in your field. Now, I have to point out here, you have to provide evidence in your application that you would have no problem finding employment. There's no requirement for you to find employment in Australia. This is not a sponsored work visa. The Australian government is not saying you have to find a job in Australia, or you have to start a business, or you have to, in fact, do anything at all. But the expectation and the hope is that you will bring your expertise and you will transfer that to the Australian economy. Now you can see dot point 3 there. You need to be nominated. There is a nomination requirement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But at this point, safe to say, global talent requires you to be nominated by an individual in Australia in the same field or a recognised organisation. And then finally, you can see there, the government makes some places available each year to PhD graduates and some PhD students who are close to graduating and can demonstrate their exceptional talent in one of those 10 target sectors. So they're the requirements of global talent. Now, how can Henley and Partners, and why should you use Henley and Partners to help you with your application? Well, first of all, when you engage Henley and Partners to help you, you get a dedicated relationship manager. Now, this doesn't just apply to global talent. This applies to any application for any program you do with Henley and Partners, any citizenship program, any residence program, anywhere in the world. I mentioned those 40 programs that we can assist with. We will allocate a dedicated relationship manager to oversee your application from start to finish and to ensure that it has the greatest chance of success. Now, here in Melbourne with the Global Talent Program, because there's a requirement to put in a professional resume and a very, very detailed supporting statement with your application, what we've done is we've partnered with a Victorian-based company of professional resume writers. They will work with you to rewrite your resume and to prepare your supporting statement so that both of them fully address all of the requirements of the Global Talent Program. That's part of our offering. It's built into what we do, and we offer that to every client. Now, the third point, this is very important, the nominator. Most other companies doing global talent will tell you there's a nomination requirement, and then they'll say, go off and find yourself a nominator and come back and tell us when you have found one and we can help you with the application. At Henley's, we don't do that. We will find a nominator for you. We will find someone in Australia, be it an industry association. I mentioned, for example, we have a lot of fintech clients. We work very closely with Fintech Australia, which is the peak body that represents that industry in Australia. and they will nominate our applicants. And likewise, if you're in the Digitech space, if you're in mining, if you're in the energy, health services, education, we will find a nominator to nominate you for global talent. Now, of course, you may already know someone in Australia through your business connections, perhaps through academia, if that's where you're engaged. You may have someone in Australia that you know working or studying or doing research in the same industry sector. Of course, if you do, we'd like to know about that person. That person might be an appropriate nominator, and we would talk to about the process with them. But if you don't have anyone, we will find you the nominator. The application process requires at the start an expression of interest. You have to tell the Australian government that you're interested in global talent, tell them about yourself, why you think you qualify, and then if the Department of Home Affairs is happy with your expression of interest, they'll send you an invitation to apply. Now, we'll prepare that expression of interest for you. Our relationship manager will liaise with you to make sure we're collecting everything we need, and we'll submit the EOI and liaise with the Home Affairs Department to make sure you have the best chance of getting invited to apply. Once you receive your invitation to apply for the Global Talent Program, of course, our team will prepare the Global Talent visa application itself and everything that goes along with that. All of the Australian visas, residence visas, require applicants to meet health and character requirements. And again, our relationship managers will help you with that requirement. At the appropriate time, we'll send you the information you need in order to undertake your health and character checks. And then finally, I'm very proud to continue to announce that Henley's success rate with global talent here is 100%. We have not had one application for global talent refused. We've lodged well over 100 of these over the years, and all of our applications have been approved by the Australian government. So that's why we would like to help you. That's why we think you should use Henley & Partners if you are interested in applying for the Global Talent Program. Now, let me tell you about a new program that in fact is going to replace Global Talent. So the background to this is the Australian government undertook a review of all immigration programs in 2022 and 2023. As a result of that review, the government has decided to close Global Talent at the end of 2024 and replace it with something called the National Innovation Visa. Now, we've liaised closely with the Home Affairs Department about this, and it is clear to us that National Innovation Visa will essentially be very, very similar to the Global Talent Visa. It'll still target very talented migrants who can drive growth in sectors of national importance. It will still provide a pathway to permanent residence for exceptional and talented migrants. The government has specifically mentioned high-performing entrepreneurs, major investors, and global researchers. We're not expecting it to be hugely different to global talent. And in fact, the government have said that they expect the transition from global talent to National Innovation Visa to be very smooth. Those people who've applied for global talent, but their applications are not finalised by the time they move over to the new program, well, they'll be considered against the new requirements for the National Innovation Visa. Now, there is one change to the National Innovation Visa that we're quite excited about, and that is the fact that major investors will be able to lodge an application. Now, for investors to qualify under global talent, they will need to provide a track record of having invested, for example, into innovative technologies or startups. This is not a program for completely passive investors. This is for people who can say, I have a history of investing into these areas which the Australian government is interested in, and I would be prepared to make some investments in Australia in that area. So we don't have the details yet. We're waiting for the specific eligibility requirements for the new program. We expect to see those later in this year, perhaps September, October. We think the new program will begin in November of this year, but we're very excited to see what the requirements are around investors. And I mentioned before, the government has allocated 4,000 places in the 2024-25 migration program for both global talent and national innovation, so the two programs together. Okay, so that's the National Innovation Visa coming later in 2024. Now, another change that I would just like to briefly mention, some of you may or may not be interested in this, the closure of the Business Innovation and Investor Program. So the Business Innovation and Investor Program has been around since 2012. It's the program that included the $5 million significant investor visa. Well, the government has now announced that that program is closing. This was not unexpected. We knew this announcement was coming. In fact, the Business Innovation and Investor Program, investment program, has not been accepting new applicants for more than 12 months anyway. And so no one has been able to apply for that program for a long, long time. The government just confirmed recently that it will definitely close. Now, how does this affect people who are already in the pipeline? If any of you are on this webinar tonight, if you have an application for the Business Innovation and Investor Program and it hasn't been finalised yet, well, you can leave your application in the pipeline. The government will get to it, but they have announced that there'll be fewer and fewer places available each year, and so it may take longer and longer to get to your application. And because of that, the government have announced that they will allow applicants to withdraw their application if they choose to from September of this year. And if you choose to do that, you get a refund of your government application fee. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that Australia had some provisional two-stage visa programs. This was one of them, where you initially got a provisional visa for 4 or 5 years, and then after achieving certain milestones, you could apply for a permanent visa. If you are a person who holds the provisional visa, but you're not yet able to apply for the permanent visa, well, nothing will change for you. The legislation will remain there. You'll still be able to turn your provisional visa into a permanent visa at the appropriate time. So I just thought I would mention that, the closure of the Business Innovation Investor Program. It's been around for a long time. A lot of people know about it, and I thought it was just appropriate for me to mention that that's closing. Okay, finally, before we dive into some questions, I thought I might just mention Australian citizenship. All of the Australian permanent residence programs provide a pathway to citizenship. To qualify for citizenship in Australia, you need to live in Australia for 4 years, and at least one of those years must be as a permanent resident. And so thinking about global talent, if you were to launch an application today and it took 6 to 9 months for your application to be finalised, you could expect to get your permanent residence early in 2025. If you then relocated to Australia, spent the next 4 years in Australia, you'd be eligible for citizenship in 2029. You could launch an application for citizenship at that time. So a citizenship application in Australia requires, there's an English test and a citizenship test. It's part of the one application process. You have to show the steps you've taken to integrate into the Australian community. Okay, so that's the Australian Global Talent Program. They're the changes coming at the end of the year. We'll do more of these webinars as more information becomes available about the new National Innovation Visa. But if anybody has got questions in the meantime, or they want to set up a call with me, you can see there my contact details. I'm always happy to answer any emails that you would like to send me or to set up a call with you. All right, let me just address some questions that have come through, and we'll see how we go. So I have a question from a person who is working as a physician in the Philippines, 48 years old. Is it still possible to work as a medical doctor in Australia? The answer is possibly yes. I mean, this is not really a global talent question. There are other skilled migration pathways for people who are GPs or medical doctors. There is a registration process, obviously, in Australia, which is not straightforward. But if you'd like to send me an email about that, we can give you some more specific information or point you in the right direction. I have a question from a person who's a relationship manager in a local bank in the UAE with 11 years experience in wealth management. Do you qualify? Hard for me to say, possibly yes. We would need to see your resume if you have one. Feel free to send it through to me. We would have a look at what you've been doing. Have you been involved in any innovation within your role with the bank? You know, how senior are you in the bank? And so on. It's hard to say based on the information you've given me, but always happy to look at your resume. If you'd like it, send it through to me. There's a question about the Global Talent Program closing and to be replaced. Yes, I covered that. So it is being replaced later in the year, but you can still apply for Global Talent. It is still open, and there's no reason why you can't launch an application now. Even if it's not finalised by the time the program changes, you'll still be in the pipeline for the new visa. We have a question from someone asking whether a relative in Australia, a brother-in-law, does that give you extra points? No, the Global Talent Program is not a points-tested program. There's no points involved. You don't need to meet a points test for Global Talent. You qualify for Global Talent based on your skills, your experience, the achievements over your career. We need to take a holistic approach and have a look at what you have done and see whether you qualify for Global Talent. But having a relative in Australia doesn't help at all. There's a question about our fees. If you'd like to get in touch with us, of course, happy to talk to you about that. Another question about Global Talent being replaced. Yes, we mentioned that. Global Talent is different to visa class 189 and 190. Yes, it is. Those are they're visas in the skilled migration program, independent school program. So they're not Global Talent. They are points tested visas. Again, if you'd like to send me an email, we can either provide you some information about that or point you in the right direction. I have a question from someone who says they applied for Global Talent and it was refused some time back. Can that person apply again? The answer is yes. You can make another application if you believe you can now meet the requirements of the Global Talent Program. Perhaps your previous application, you didn't provide enough information. Hard for me to know. But yes, there's no problem with you launching a new application if you would like to do that. I have a question from someone who says they are a CFO, 53 years of age, working in Dubai, an MBA from American University. Would it be possible, and what are the costs? Well, the answer is definitely yes, it would be the cost. If you're the CFO of a company in the UAE, be very interested to know what the company is, what you do, what your some of the work you've done as a CFO. Of course, having an MBA from the US is very attractive. Please get in touch, send us your resume. You have my contact details there, and we'd be happy to provide you with some more information. Question from someone asking how to share the CV. You can see on the screen there my email address. Please feel free to just shoot it through to me and we can have a look for you. I have a question about the National Innovation Visa, the requirements to have to invest in an endeavour. Look, I mentioned that we don't yet have the specific requirements for the National Innovation Visa. We don't believe there will be a specific requirement for you to make an investment. The government is looking for your history of investing. In order to qualify, they're going to want to know, what have you done in the past? Perhaps it's been some venture capital investing, perhaps you've been involved in some other startups, you've put money into businesses in those innovative areas that I mentioned. Those 10 industry sectors that I mentioned on a previous slide, there they are there. You know, they may or may not carry over to the new National Innovation Visa. We're expecting most of them will, but there could be new sectors, you know, advanced robotics, green energy, for example, areas where the Australian government feels they would like to introduce innovation and some investment. But will you be specifically asked to make an investment? We don't believe so. A person working in Saudi in supply chain and business developer, can you apply? Originally from India, but look, we get a lot of applicants from India, yes, and Indian qualifications are very good. We get a lot of IT and Digitech applicants from India. So the answer is yes, you may be able to apply. Again, difficult for me to make a comment about that just based on what you've told me. Always best to send me an email, attach your resume, we can have a look and come back to you and give you some advice. And I should say, at Henley & Partners, we don't charge for advice. We'll talk to you about the program. We'll talk to you about the requirements. We'll let you know, you know, whether we think you will qualify, and there's no fee for that. Civil engineer, internationally recognised, yes, definitely. Engineering, depending on what you've done, your experience again. If you've been working in one of those 10 industry sectors, and you can show us some innovation over your career, what level you're working at, again, same answer as before. Please send us your resume. We'd be happy to have a look. I'm working in the energy sector, not in a very high position, but want to start up investor in health sector. Can I fall into eligibility? Look, that might be difficult for global talent, but it might be possible under the new National Innovation Visa. I mentioned the investor category. Of course, they would want to see your history of investing and you know what you've done in the past, but it is possible. But again, feel free to contact us. We can give you some advice. A question about the requirements for national innovation. Yeah, I mentioned that we don't have the final requirements. The government is still working through their policy development for the National Innovation Visa. We expect to see those details in the next couple of months, but we have been advised that it won't be significantly different to global talent. And so you can see that most of the things I've spoken about today will carry over to the new National Innovation Visa. Another question about our services. Please get in touch and we'd be happy to tell you what our fee is for assisting you. Singaporean Chinese business owner of a biotech company. You're setting up a subsidiary in Australia. Yeah, look, you asked a question about proof of income. If you're the business owner, income is less relevant. The income that I mentioned, the requirement for you to be able to find employment in Australia, that really applies to people working in a salaried position. And I should mention that the Australian government is looking at people earning the equivalent of 175,000 Australian dollars or above. But if you're a business owner and you're looking at setting up a subsidiary, well, definitely yes. I think you might qualify for global talent. We'd be very keen to hear from you. Please get in touch, send us some information and we'll get back to you about that. How many dependents can the main applicant bring? That's a very good question. There is no limit on the number of dependents. you can include your spouse, your partner. You can include, obviously, children under the age of 18. They're automatically dependent. You can include adult dependent children who are over 18 and less than 23 if they are full-time students at university or college and still fully dependent on you. So you need to prove that they're dependent and you need to show that they're full-time students, but they can also be included. Australia does not allow the inclusion of other relatives, grandparents, and so on in any application. Question, is someone with 5 PhDs allowed to apply? Wow, 5 PhDs, that's very impressive. How would you find time to do that? But the answer is definitely yes. If you've got those sorts of qualifications, please get in touch. We'd be happy to give you some advice. I'm working as a senior manager in logistic and shipping industry. Would there be a chance? Potentially, yes. We'd need to know exactly what the industry is doing, what your specific role is. But it could be. You could see that infrastructure is one of the 10 industry sectors at the moment. So it's possible. Again, please get in touch. We're happy to give you some advice. Professional salesperson, 30 years experience, 55 years already. Currently in fintech, working remotely in the Philippines. Look, sales is, well, there's two issues there. Sales is not all that easy to argue under global talent, combined with the fact that you're already over 55. But look, again, it's difficult for me to say whether you would or you wouldn't qualify. Send us an email, attach a copy of your resume. We'd like to know exactly what you've been doing. The fact that you're country manager for Australia working in the Philippines, that carries some weight. We'd like to look at your background and give you some advice. A technology leader, successful M&A of a startup in India for a multi-million-dollar company, masters in data science from the US. You sound like a perfect global talent client. Please get in touch with us. Send us your details. We'll have a look. We'll come back to you. But yeah, that's the sort of experience that the Australian government is specifically looking for. So I think we'd be able to help you. I've got a question about processing times. Yeah, look, we're currently telling our clients, 6 to 9 months. We kind of see about 3 months for the expression of interest, and then 6 to 9 months for the application. So that's what it is at the moment. The Australian government is working to bring that processing time down, and so we expect to see that improve over time. But at the moment, that's what it is. Yes, we have someone who's working in fintech, investment manager, wealth management. Again, it's a question about our fee. I'm not going to go into our fees on the webinar, but you can certainly get in touch with us if you're working in fintech, depending on what you've been doing. Sounds like you might be eligible, and then we can give you a quote for our service. Do you have any work visa program? No, at Henleys we don't do work visas. We do have some other colleagues that we could refer you to if you want to get in touch. But no, at Henleys we do residence by investment, citizenship by investment, and also for Australia, the Global Talent Program. Okay, a question, what sort of support and guidance can you expect from Henley & Partners throughout the process? Well, I mentioned this in the presentation. I mean, we will allocate you a relationship manager. First of all, we'll do a very thorough investigation of your, when you send us your details, and give you some very good advice on whether we think you will get a global talent visa. If we don't think we can get you the global talent visa, we'll tell you, and you won't incur any cost. And then you won't have wasted your time and you won't have wasted any money. If we think we can get you a global talent visa, we'll tell you, and we'll tell you what the process is. Our relationship manager will work with you right through the process to make sure that that application, when it's ready to submit, is the strongest it can possibly be. And I mentioned that for our applicants, those that have been invited to apply for the program and where we've lodged applications, our success rate is 100%. We have a question. I'm a civil engineer with over 18 years experience in project management and construction in the oil and energy sector. Can I be eligible? Definitely yes. The energy sector is one of the sectors mentioned in the 10 future focused sectors. I imagine it will still be one of the areas of national importance once we see the new National Innovation Visa details. If you're working in engineering, project managing and construction, then I think it's possible that you would be eligible. We would like to see the background that you have, what you've done, what is some of the innovation that you may have brought to the industry, and we can give you that advice. Can I give some examples of GTV applicants who got their visas? I mean, that's difficult for us to say. I mean, we've had people working in the Digitech space. We've had fund managers. We've had people in the insurance industry, in fintech, doing neo-banking. We've had people in biotech, working in the circular economy and other areas. Global talent is a very subjective visa application. And so it really is about you as an individual. So what we need to do is when you send us your resume or information or your LinkedIn profile, we will do a lot of research. We will do a lot of digging. We will work out whether we think you have got the background and the skills, the international recognition that the Australian government is looking for. And we will come back to you and tell you that before you make a decision about whether you want to proceed. Okay, well, besides the quality of life, what are the other benefits of Australian citizenship? Well, I guess, you get to hold an Australian passport, which is one of the strongest passports in the world. The Henley Passport Index, which we put out regularly every year, lists passports by the strength of their travel ability, so the number of countries you can travel to visa-free. And the Australian passport, is up there in the top 10 in the world. So it's a very, very strong passport. Of course, once you hold Australian citizenship, you don't need to worry about renewing your residence in Australia at any time. So you can hold citizenship and you don't have to worry about that. Can I send the PowerPoint? Look, get in touch with me, and I'm happy to send you a PDF of some of these slides. I have no problem with that. I mentioned that the presentation, the recording, will be made available to everyone who's registered, so you'll see that in the next few days. Electric vehicle product expert and senior strategy professional. Definitely get in touch. Yes. The transition to renewables, both, for baseload power, but also electric vehicles, that's a major issue in Australia at the moment. There are some big government innovation happening. And so somebody with your expertise may well be eligible for global talent. So please get in touch and we will give you some advice. Textile manufacturing, can I apply? Again, look, you see there on the list, advanced manufacturing is one of the sectors. We would need to see details of what you're doing in textile manufacturing. Perhaps you've brought some innovation to that industry in your career. They're the sorts of things we'd need to bring out in an application. So please just send me your details and we can give you some advice. Are questions in your list put in order of significance and probability to get a visa, or is it random? I'm not sure what that means. I'll skip that one. Yeah, questions about costs, as I mentioned, please just send us an email and we'll get in touch with you about our costs. Visual artists or painters qualified to apply. Okay, not for global talent, because you can see that, well, unless you're involved in the education sector in some way, potentially, I suppose. But if you're an artist, then no, global talent doesn't apply to you. There is a sector for distinguished talent, for people in the arts, sports, academia, and so on. It's possible. Again, you would need to send us some more information. Okay, so Michael is asking me about the industry sectors. Is there any order? No, that's the random order. There is no kind of importance given to anyone above any other. As I said, we do a lot of clients in the fintech space, digitech, health industries, and so on. In order to qualify, you need to be involved in one of those sectors, but they're not, ranked in any order. Okay, this is a very good question about the living requirements. I guess this is about residents. What is the living requirement once the visa is granted? Do we need to stay continuously in Australia for a specific period of time? The answer is no. Once your global talent visa is granted, it will have a 5-year validity on it. You can come and go, you can live here, you can work, study, buy property, you can put your kids in school, whatever you want to do. At the end of that 5-year period, you might be eligible for citizenship. If you spend all of it here, for example, you could apply for citizenship. If you haven't, then what you'll need to do is apply for what's called a resident return visa, an RRV. The RRV, it's a straightforward application process. You do it online. It costs a few hundred Australian dollars. It's not like applying again for global talent. It's very common. Lots of people applying for RRVs. If you have spent 2 years in Australia out of that previous 5 years, the first 5 years, then your RRV can be granted with another 5-year validity. And you can just keep doing that every 5 years. But in order to do that, you need to be spending 2 years out of every 5 physically in Australia. If you're spending less than 2 years out of 5, you can still renew, you can still get the RRV, keep the residence going, but it'll be renewed for a year at a time. And you also, as part of your application, you need to tell the Australian government what ties you have to Australia. What ties have you established? Are they cultural ties, family ties? Maybe you've got kids enrolled in university here. Maybe you've got business ties. You might have made some investments here, and so on and so forth. So more than 2 years out of 5, essentially automatically renewed. You can get 5 years at a time. Less than 2 years out of 5, renewed for a year at a time, until obviously you've got 2 years, and then you can renew for 5. And you also need to show what ties you have to Australia. Can one hold Australian permanent residence permanently, subject to renewal, without taking up the citizenship? Of course, yes. There's no requirement on you to become a citizen. You can hold permanent residence for as long as you are eligible. And I just mentioned how you renew that. Okay, all right, a couple more questions. What is 2 of 2 requirements? Oh, okay, I think that means you wanted me to click on the next slide. There you are, if you wanted to read that, if you've come in a little bit late. If I was on a student visa for 5 years, will the 5 years in Australia count towards the year requirement? Well, you're talking about the requirement for citizenship. When you apply for citizenship, you need to, first of all, you need to have 4 years of residence. So the government looks back 4 years, and counts that. One of those years must be as a permanent resident. So some years here as a student would count potentially, but it would be how close it was to your application for citizenship. Do I need to live continuously in Australia for 4 years to get citizenship, or can I live and receive it after waiting 4 years? So I think you mean, can you leave Australia? Well, once you have gone out of Australia for 4 years, you can't count residence that you accumulated, 8 years ago or 10 years ago. That's not how the system works. The government says, if you want citizenship, you make an application. You need to be in Australia for 4 years. One of those needs to be as a permanent resident. We look back over the 4 years before your application, and we look at how much time you spent here. All right. Final question, I think. Can I explain the healthcare and insurance benefits for GTI holders? Is superannuation applicable to GTI visa holders? Right, the first bit, healthcare and insurance. Well, we have universal healthcare here, national healthcare called Medicare. Once you get the global talent visa, you're a permanent resident. As soon as you get here, you can register for Medicare and you're eligible like any other Australian citizen or permanent resident for the benefits of Medicare. You can also, if you choose to, take out additional private health insurance. Many people in Australia do that. That's up to you. There's no requirement to do that. But as a permanent resident with a GTI visa, you'll be eligible for Medicare like any other Australian. Superannuation, well, we have compulsory employer-funded superannuation in Australia. And so at the moment, if you're employed in Australia, your employer must contribute 11.5% of your salary to your superannuation fund of choice. And you can also contribute to your superannuation if you choose to, but the employer is required to contribute. So that also applies to GTI holders, your permanent residents. If you come here and you get employed, then yes, you have the benefits of the Australian superannuation system. Okay, I can't see any other questions popping up. I'm just going to put my contact details back up on the screen for you to have a look at. That's got my my name there, my email address. I mentioned, please feel free to send me an email if you've got any further questions about the presentation tonight. I invited many of you to send me a resume. And we're happy, my team here, we're happy to look at those and advise you whether we think you will qualify for Global Talent. It's a terrific program. It is being replaced at the end of this year, but it's still available now. And we are still seeing a lot of interest in the program, and we'd be very happy to help you. Okay, I don't seem to have any other questions. So if there are no others, then I think I might end the webinar now. As I mentioned, it has been recorded. If you registered, you will get a link and you'll be able to see the recording. But if you've got any other questions, please just get in touch. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope you found it useful, and I hope to hear from you soon. Okay, good night.